and I'm living it strange. Cause I'm on an infinite plane. I'm doing different things, yeah, I'm on an infinite plane. I'm on an infinite plane. I'm on an infinite plane. Stay with the infinite gang.
Alright, today's January 17th, 2022. This is Infinite Gang by Neo Mode Gucci Flip. Put a link in the chat to the track. It's Monday morning, just got back from Crater Earth USA. If you haven't been listening to that, just go to darkmatter.radio, where you can find links to the latest archives, or search Crater Earth USA on YouTube. Super easy to find, great channel, always fun. Always informative, and always poignant. I mean, it's entertaining and it's great to be around people of like mind, but it's also pertinent if you want to understand the reality that we're in from a perspective like ours that takes into account that most of what we're presented with is false, deception. As Commander Lou calls it, counterfeit. Check this out. Bob Saget predicted his own death. Now, I remember when he died, we all shared that Instagram post where he said something about he's waiting for his last shot, or he's going to keep going until he gets that big shot. And a number of people said that that could be a reference to some comedy gig he was aiming for. So I'm thinking, wait a second here. Sounds like predictive programming because he just publicly got his shot and then this happens. Make of that what you will. It just seems like there's propaganda to incite this extreme division of opinions over the pokey, and this would just feed into it. So anyway, he somewhat predicted his own death by that Instagram post. But now check this out. He predicted his own death very explicitly when he was on episode 118 of Kelly Rizzo. Now you got to hear this. He explicitly says, and I have the quote here in the headline, "I don't have long to live, and I'm going to be found dead in bed."
Absolutely love movies as well.
You
but
love
there's just
5
something...
movies. You love Big
Well, that's
Lebowski
not true.
every day. You could watch Big
I love
Lebowski
Big
4 times a day.
Lebowski, The Godfather, Wayne's World, Godfather 2, Goodfellas.
Okay, now again, this is just for context. This is Bob Saget on Kelly Rizzo, and they're discussing how they met, and they're talking about her production company. And here's where he makes this very bizarre statement about how he's about to be found dead in a bed.
Such a movie.
Right.
Um,
But we got through
because-
Squid Ink. That was difficult.
Squid Ink. Squid Game.
Why are people
so-
taking their kids out for Halloween in Squid Game costumes? It's gross. It's a terrible thing to do. It'd be like, I don't know.
Are they though?
Yeah.
They haven't had...
Now, just a moment here. I have to make sure I got the clip cued properly. Let me go ahead and see who's in chat also while we're getting this clip together. Michael Cervantes says, was MLK's assassination fake? X33 says, Penguin. Marcel, greetings from the Netherlands. MLK's assassination. Good question. I came across something I would say kind of convincing that maybe, yes, not only was it staged, which would fit the pattern in the program, but that he was actually repurposed like a lot of these death fakers tend to be. So if MLK was repurposed, who did he come back as? You know, I've got a few hints. I have a few people who've suggested that it's actually Don King. Kind of an interesting little deep fake possibility. We'll go ahead and look into that one here shortly. Let me go ahead and play this clip again. This is Bob Saget talking about how he is going to be found dead in bed.
Well, that's it. Look what's happened. The world's ruined with this
I mean,
one
I would
video.
assume that these kids aren't seeing Squid Game.
Maybe they're living it.
Okay, you know, I'm going to go ahead and go straight to the source. Bear with me while I find this clip. And I'll go ahead and edit this out of the final cut for the upload so you don't hear any searching. I mean, I usually have these things perfectly synced, but you know what happens when you're banned on dozens and dozens of Gmail accounts and YouTube channels? I can't actually share. I can't share a video with Google Chrome logged in. I have to go into an incognito window. I have to do backflips to do a lot of the stuff that normal people just do. And they've rigged it this way. They've made it very difficult to function. as a free thinker.
absolutely love movies as well. Um,
You
but
love
there's just
5
something.
movies. You love Big
Well, that's not
Lebowski
true.
every day. You could watch Big
I love
Lebowski
Big
4 times a day.
Lebowski, The Godfather, Wayne's World, Godfather 2,
If you just got
Goodfellas,
here, we're fishing for a soundbite where Bob Saget says he's going to die.
Casino, Scarface. Um, but
So I don't have long to live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
That's it. It was hidden in there. You see how that was buried? It was so easy to miss. I probably didn't miss it the first time. I just didn't catch it. He said, I probably don't have long to live. I'm going to be found dead in bed. And she doesn't even respond. If you notice, Kelly doesn't even notice what he said.
you better watch out. So I don't know. There's just something. Maybe it brings back that like cozy quarantine feeling that we had. But there's something I love about just being.
You see what I mean? They just kind of gloss over it. That's what's so peculiar about it. Let's do this again. Let's go back to 48 minutes and 40 seconds into the October 25th episode. This is Bob Saget's YouTube channel.
Wayne's World, Godfather 2, Goodfellas, Casino, Scarface.
Okay, here we go.
But
So I don't have long to live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
but
So
Now-
I don't.
I'm going to slow this down a little bit. So, for those of you who want to archive this or whatever, this is a great example of what I would call predictive programming, and this was just last October. So let's put it back down to about 0.5 on the playback speed. That way, there's no mistaking what is being said here. Maybe 0.75. I don't want to go too slow. This isn't slow motion, but I want to make it very clear. Bob Saget says something very ominous.
These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
Yeah, very clear. I'm going to be found dead in bed. So there you have it. Bob Saget, going to be found dead in bed. Almost subliminal. I mean, I was getting a little frustrated there trying to find that clip. I knew it was buried in there, but he said, I don't have long to live. I'm going to be found dead in bed. And again, she barely responds to it.
Scarface. But
So I don't have long to live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
Yeah, so he inserted that line in there. Very subliminal. Non sequitur, absolutely. And that was from October the 25th, 2021. So a few months ago. And then again, he sort of foreshadowed it with that jab
You
comment
better watch.
on his Instagram. And then she says something unrelated. So anyway, if you find this interesting, you can find the links to everything we discuss over at my Minds account or get on my newsletter. Bob Saget predicted his own death. Let's go through the other headlines really quick here. The Dallas QAnon cult believes JFK was disguised as Trump at the Arizona rally. You know, this is the stuff that only we used to talk about 6 or 7 months ago. And the regular QAnoners, the quote normal QAnoners, were like, oh, we're not like that. You're just making us look crazy. And then I talked to one of the top authors on the subject. That would be Mike Rothschild, who wrote a book about Q, the coming storm. And I said, what do you make of this JFK is Jesus, JFK is coming back thing? And he said, oh, it's marginal. Pay no attention to that. Now here we are, almost 9 months later, and it is the main story. The Dallas QAnon cult believes JFK was disguised as Trump. So this is the next thing. I was watching Trump's speech last night, and there were many, I'm talking like thousands of QAnon believers who were convinced that wasn't Donald Trump on the stage, but it was JFK Jr. in a disguise or possibly JFK himself. So there's a couple of different interpretations here, but one of the things they noted was that his ear, the thickness of his neck, the fact that he had the hat lower on his face, all made people suspicious. But people were kind of conflicted. Are we looking at JFK, 106-year-old, dead president, or his 60-year-old dead son, JFK Jr.? What do you all think? Let's see, going through comments. What do you all think of that subliminal thing with Bob Saget? Post your comments below. Why would he foreshadow that? Why would he tell us? What kind of mind games are they playing? Now check this out too. this is an example of a deepfake Donald Trump mask. It's perfect. And there's something about the hair. People made fun of his hair at the very beginning of his presidency. It's like one of the things I've noticed about these deepfake masks is that they always have long, floppy hair, and I think it helps the disguise. This is one of the things that leads me to think that Boris Johnson, Bojo, who was disco dancing every weekend during quarantine while he was telling you to lock down, that Bojo is also one of these deepfake disguises. I find it very difficult to believe. Cubstar says, imagine making the QAnons look crazy. Yeah, precisely. Sleepy Random says, we all know QAnon has never been wrong. Well, the QAnon PSYOP, I believe, was authored and created by the same people that wrote 9/11. So believe in it if you want to. Believe in George W. Bush if you want to. You can see what they've done. This has all been the creation of the American counterpart to ISIS, vanilla ISIS, white Al-Qaeda. The American Taliban is the MAGA ban. They've been creating the perception of a radicalized right so that they can turn the world against America, well, at least America's right, because that's the obstacle to this perfect one world harmony. It's a perfect setup. And I think that the radicalization of the Islamic fundamentalists by the Quran 20 years ago has been replaced by the radicalization of the American Taliban, the MAGA ban, by the QAnon. The QAnon Quran connection is important, especially when you look into the radical verse idea and then the fringe incel suicide bombers and what the incel movement is actually about. It's the far, far right's view of women and their place in Western society and how they view Western society as having been hijacked by some satanic forces from a small country over there somewhere. And that's the exact same narrative as the Islamic terrorists with their war on Great Satan and Little Satan. Little Satan's Israel, Great Satan's America. Well, the MAGA ban and the Taliban or the vanilla ISIS thing, they have the same exact MO. They're fighting the deep state. All right, let's see. Someone else, Master Simp 12 said this to me this morning. He said, hey, Norm Macdonald used to talk about an actor who had cancer and never told anyone until after he died. He said he would do the same thing, and then he did. Okay, there's some foreshadowing with Norm Macdonald. We'll have to look into that one. Anytime one of these SNL characters goes, I have to really question it. And this is an interesting one, too. So special effects masks were discussed on the show Mythbusters. And so you have these actors from Mythbusters. And look, Mythbusters is myth reinforcement. They reinforce the myths that the public are supposed to believe. And they make sure that nobody figures out the truth. So these guys are this is what I would call controlled opposition. I mean, they may dismiss certain popular myths, but ultimately we're looking at gatekeepers. So here you have the characters from Mythbusters putting on deepfake versions of themselves.
Oh my God, now I have the power. Don't you find this a little weird?
Yeah, it is.
And of course, it led to a whole heap of hilarious hijinks. This is my brother, Jamie.
So each is wearing the mask of the other. The thing is, this isn't the best that there is. This is simply a hood / mask with hair, and you can see the long hair and the floppiness of it, how it, I think, completes the disguise. This is probably what Bojo is. If you're, Boris Johnson is probably Matt Lucas wearing one of these. So when Vice is mocking the QAnon cultists for thinking that Donald Trump might be somebody else, well, they're not too far off. I mean, it's within the realm of possibility. And that's the reason why I cover this. Our whole reality has been deepfaked, and if you don't know about it, you might be laughing at the people who know the truth. Okay, let me go through some comments here. All right. David A. Pryor says, more like Truthbusters. Yeah. Okay, Pete Shea's in the room. He says, where is George W. these days? Well, if you believe QAnon, he's already been executed at Guantanamo. The QAnoners believe that the, quote, the shot that they were all getting, whenever they talked about these celebrities getting the shot, was a code for their execution. But they still seem to pop up. But they could all be deepfakes, and that's one of the things that's been suggested. Incidentally, Governor DeSantis and, Florida's Governor DeSantis and Donald Trump are butting heads right now. Donald Trump threw shade at DeSantis just the other day, or at that Trump rally. So before they were friends, but now it's like maybe not. But anyway, there was this video going around a few months ago where DeSantis was exposed as using the exact same hand gestures as Donald Trump. They move the same, they look the same, and many body language experts examined this. Why are they using the same exact hand gestures? So I'm going to play this clip here. This is DeSantis copying Trump? And I'll explain the significance.
Judges are a priority.
Now, if you're watching the screen, you can see it's a split screen, and you can see their hands are moving in the exact same way as they speak.
And honestly, we have businesses that have been locked down and lives destroyed for over a year based on saying no COVID vaccine passports are made in China and shipped here. Why would we want so many important things?
Now, looking at them both, looking at their skin, their hair, and their body language, I'm actually open to the possibility that DeSantis and Trump are both played by the same actor. That's within the realm of possibility, I'm saying. It's really either that or DeSantis is copying him. But my point is, that's what it would look like. If you had some actor playing the role of a politician wearing these deep fake special effects hoods, it would look like this. The hands would move the same, the body language would move the same, the gesticulations would be the same. Very nuanced, idiosyncratic. But the faces are different. So, again, what are we looking at here? Deep faked reality? Are you open to the possibility that these are all literal characters? So there's more. This is where Mythbusters gets myth busted. And I have someone in one of the think tanks, I think it was one of the YouTube channels, had posted this to me, and they said, look into it. Here it is. There's a character named Professor Simon Holland. And it was suggested to me that maybe Professor Simon Holland is in fact a character being portrayed by one of the guys from Mythbusters. This is how I found Mythbusters trying on these rubber masks. What are the odds? So Adam Savage is the one we're referring to here. And I want to give thanks to the Fenris Unchained for the lead here. He said, have you seen Professor Simon Holland from YouTube? And compared him to Adam Savage from Mythbusters. So if you take a look here, you see Professor Simon Holland, who looks like an older version of Adam Savage. Note the teeth if you're looking at the video. Now here you're looking at Adam Savage. What's the difference? It's very close, and Adam Savage, I would say it's about within. It looks like they're related, father son perhaps. But now that you know that this guy is familiar with the technology. In fact, I have a clip of Adam Savage wearing an old man hood. Like he looks like he might have picked it up that day from the shop. Okay, Cubstar says it could be the same actor playing digital avatars. Yeah, I think likely they phased out a lot of the rubber hoods used by politicians and they use digital now. Which would make sense because, it was only in 2015 that this was declassified by the CIA that they use. Hyper-realistic masks, hyper-realistic silicone masks to fake identities, to create people who don't exist, and then insert them into reality. So anyway, I'm pretty sure that we have indeed busted a myth here. A mythical character who doesn't actually exist. And that's the thing. That's what I mean when I say deepfake. So, Professor Holland, Professor Simon Holland, may not actually exist. There's a few other people who may not actually exist. Benicio del Toro, the actor, yeah, he may not exist. As crazy as that sounds, he may actually be a character played by, I believe, Brad Pitt. Anyway, let me look at Professor Simon Holland, a few other pictures. Yeah, easy to find, check for yourself. Huge claim, but we know it's within the realm of possibility. Could we be wrong? Yeah, it's possible. I think. We've been wrong a couple of times. And if we are wrong, we always backtrack and we try to find out how we arrived at an erroneous conclusion. But I'm not quick to arrive at conclusions. Look, another one. Tupac in disguise at the Trump rally. So whoever was at the podium, we have another one. Tupac was in the crowd behind him. Now, this is not Akil the MC. So they were expecting Tupac, they were expecting John Lennon, who I believe became Steve Jobs, but side note. But I'm pretty sure that Tupac didn't go undercover. I think he was repurposed as another rapper known as Akil the MC. But QAnoners believe that this man here is Tupac, and he has been at every Trump rally. And I would say that he does look rubbery.
When nobody else would finance him, there would be no hip hop. That's why I look down on Jay-Z.
Now the audio is kind of low. This guy's recording off his TV, and I think you heard his dog. Let me hear. It sounds like dogs. You know, they shake and their ears flap. Yeah, that was a dog in the background. But this is supposedly Tupac.
Snoop Dogg wouldn't exist without Trump because Trump used to go to his ball.
He just said Snoop Dogg wouldn't exist without Trump. I can't believe I just heard that. All right, let me go back and assess the chat. All right. Silent Siren says the minute they went digital is when the Reptoid boom started with the CGI glitches. Good point, and I agree with you. I think that was actually a cover. A great way to cover it up, too. They have great ways to explain away the glitches that we see in the Matrix. David A. Pryor says, makes sense to declassify when they move on to a new tech. Well, here, one of the big stories today is how the deepfaker that impersonates Tom Cruise just got kicked off Instagram, and that people can't tell the difference between digital and real anymore. And they're saying, oh, our reality's been totally compromised. What could this mean? And I'm like, don't you realize they've already been doing this? You've been deepfaked your entire life. They just switched tech. So don't be under the impression that they're going to start tricking you with fake people. No, you've been faked your entire life, and it's just a question of, well, who have we known our entire lives through the screen out there? Is an example of one of these deep fakes. And so when I say someone like Benicio del Toro may not actually exist, yeah, it's true. Just like David Hogg doesn't exist. Think about that. You have a character on the world stage, you have someone playing this role now, but the actual person may as well be a time traveler that jumped into our timeline just in time for that shooting. Like just merged with this reality because they don't have a backstory that checks out. They create little flimsy ones and they're trying harder and harder. But if you notice, whenever you have these big shootings, the shooter's Facebook profile generally was created the day before. Oftentimes, I mean, we have many examples of GoFundMe accounts set up before an event. Or my favorite one, the Thousand Oaks shooting, which involved 50 of the same victims that were shot at in Vegas. The Borderlands shooting. Okay, well, 13 of those who died, their names were put on t-shirts that were sent to the NBA for some event in LA 36 hours after the shooting. So that's not enough time for the blood to really dry. I mean, 13 hours after the shooting. 13 people are shot, and 36, like not even 2 days later, you already have shirts being worn by celebrity athletes with the names of the victims. It's just too much, too fast. Is that enough time to notify the next of kin, get their permission, whatever? So I called the t-shirt company, I believe it was Sinbad Tees, and I asked them, what's the fastest you can get me some t-shirts if I give you a design tonight by email? And they were like, oh, it's a week. And I'm like, a week? Wait a minute here. Anyway, foreknowledge. Matt89 says, I'm on board with Akil the MC being Tupac and The Weeknd being Justin Bieber. P. Trippa 103 says, Eddie Murphy in Coming to America plays a lot of characters too. Oh, many different ages as well. And that shows you the sophistication of these disguises and how when they're used by trained actors, they're so much the better. And something about Coming to America. So they had the sequel to it. Well, the sequel about a returning king, this is a side note, but I often talk about the symbolism. Crown, king, phoenix, this return or rebirth cycle, all of that relates to the number 33 for a number of reasons. But look at this headline. Why Coming to America took 33 years to happen. Coming to a picture, here's Eddie Murphy wearing a crown. Here he is, two different versions, 33 years apart. But it has all the symbolism there. Returning king, crown, 33, all very significant. And also, and I believe there was a conversation in Discord, I think it was Polecat had pointed this out, that an alternate name for the god Ra, the sun god, is Re, or R-E, an alternate spelling for Ra. So is it R-A or R-E? Well, it doesn't matter. The sun god, one of the creator gods of Egypt. We're talking about returning kings. Well, the term reset has a specific connotation here because the whole reset, the Great Reset, does have to do with the timing astrologically and the New Age. And we just had the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, the Bethlehem star, the likes of which we haven't had that timing, that conjunction since the last time we entered a quote New Age. We're talking about the year 0, Jesus' birth, the Bethlehem star. So it seems like the reset, the Great Reset we're going through right now, has everything to do with the sun as it transitions through the zodiac, through the signs. So my point being, the Great Reset has everything to do with the sun's movement through the heavens and this great procession. But at the same time, the symbolism here on earth, the returning king, uses the same terminology: reset, rebirth, resurrection. But definitely some kind of sun connotation there. David A. Pryor says, gives a whole new meaning to R-E-E-E-E-E-E. Right, well, Ra is the god of wrath. And I think that is the spelling for having a meltdown. Let me see if I can find the definition for that. What does Re mean? It's the most commonly used by, here we go. It's a meme most commonly used by Pepe the Frog to express intense rage. And Ra is the god of rage. So if there, yes, I would say that there is a direct significance there. It is a whole new meaning. The god of wrath, the god of rage. Hike Neuter says, IPS, does he listen to Crow 7777777? I used to watch his videos about the moon waves, and I like that. How it was just like, you're out there, you're an astrophotographer filming the stars, filming UFOs, etc. And he's filming the moon, and it has this wave through it, like a refresh wave. Like it's a hologram or something, or a screen being refreshed. Or like maybe a plane's passing by, a little bit of that wingtip vortices causing a ripple effect. Or possibly his cell phone was going off and it was on vibrate. And it's vibrating the tripod that the camera is on. That would also cause the wave. I mean, I'm not sure. What do you all think? What causes Crow 77777's lunar waves? And then another thing, he also discovered that we have another sun that none of us have noticed, but his camera has found it. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, here it is. The lunar wave, a second sun, liquid space. Okay, looks like a pretty decent episode. This is from the Sam Tripoli show. I'll check it out later. It's been a while since I've looked into his work. But the thing is, I'm not really a big fan of people who will purport something to be evidence just because their camera picked it up, when there might be equally compelling explanations that would be explained in the troubleshooting manual. And I don't mean to sound like a Metabunk McWest type here, but he has replicated most of these special effects people get who claim that they've found multiple suns and lunar waves. He's replicated this stuff very simply using glass and little techniques, just reflections. All right, let me see. Meh King says, damn, I'm late. Hey, we're going to be here pretty much every day at noon. I'm sorry, about 1 o'clock Mountain Time, right after Crater Earth USA. So, and there will be a lot of back-to-back live streams if you follow darkmatter.radio. There's a lot going on. Let's move on. And if I could do more, I would. The other night I fell asleep. I was dreaming of checking emails, of updating my OBS streaming software, doing the archives. It's like I'm already in the metaverse in my sleep. All I need is the Neuralink. I'll get so much more work done. Cubstar says Crow 7777 stepped away from the lunar wave when people pointed out the plane trails. Yeah, so the way it works is when a plane flies by, it leaves it leaves a ripple effect. And if you're photographing the moon or you're videotaping the moon and a plane comes by even close in proximity, it may cause that ripple effect. Now the thing is, he never mentions that he's seen any planes. And they did bring this up on Globebusters, and they said that you would only have that from a supersonic bow wave, that it would only happen in very special circumstances, that regular planes wouldn't do it. But I've also seen that contradicted. David A. Pryor says, I think a lunar wave would have been seen by many people moonwatching. Sure, that is one of the main points, but let me bring up this other explanation, because here's the thing. When somebody questions your explanation and then you run, it looks a little suspect. And what happened was there was a bit of dodging, I thought. Dodging, weaving. They try to create arguments from ad populum, where they brought this issue up on Globebusters, and they had the Morgile, Jaron, Bob, and the others all explaining how, oh no, this couldn't happen from a regular wingtip vortice. It would have to happen only from a supersonic bow wave. And I'm like, why are they defending this? If you're wrong, you're wrong. Admit it. Hey, I discovered this interesting effect. And I think the reason why is that there's no way you could be filming the full moon, have a plane pass by and not notice. So it just seems like maybe a little disingenuous. That's what some people think. I'm still in the camp that his vibrating cell phone was going off in his pocket and it was vibrating the camera through the tripod, and that would cause the same thing. So here's what would probably be causing the effect, though, of the lunar waves.
Relatively low pressure region above the wing. It is this pressure difference that hold the aircraft up during flight. However, airflow is inherently three-dimensional, and air tends to flow from high pressure regions to low pressure regions. Because of this, if we change our perspective away from the side view to the rear view, we can see that the air will flow around the wingtips from below to above. It is this flow that creates the wingtip vortices.
Okay, so these wingtip vortices, which aren't really visible except as ripples in the atmosphere, would be highlighted in front of the moon, and you would see it as an effect. So if you search wingtip vortices full moon, you can find people who have done this, who have actually observed this, but they're not running to the conclusion that the moon is therefore a hologram and that they had to update the software and that it was witnessed. Here we go. This is from 5 years ago. But this guy here is not a new ager with an alternative explanation. He actually sought out what he thought is the most scientific explanation. I mean, maybe he's wrong. Maybe someone needs to let him know, actually, man, you discovered that the moon is a hologram. Which I'm not saying it's not. I mean, Joe Biden's a hologram. This is not a huge claim. Okay, here we go. This is it. Alright, so what is that? The whole moon just had a wave, a ripple go through it. Not a difficult thing. Not a difficult thing to recreate. It's repeatable. And if that's again, we'll get into that later. I'm a very skeptical person when it comes to extraordinary claims. Like this one, the third booster will increase your chance of getting hit by space rocks by 33%. Does anyone here believe that? I think there might be a correlation, though. I think that someone who gets their third booster is probably 33% more likely to believe that they're probably going to be a victim of space rocks at some point in their future. It's really all about belief. What they can get people to believe. They can just manifest it into reality. Okay, we mentioned that Bob Saget predicted his own death. He said, quote, "I don't have long to live. I'm going to be found dead in bed." And that was with Kelly Rizzo. The Dallas QAnon cult believes that JFK was disguised as a Donald Trump himself, actually, at the rally. Again, this was an interesting rally. I watched the whole thing, and yeah, they do have a point. It was kind of hard to see who was there. Trump's neck did look very thick. He did have a hat pulled low over his face, and so there's a lot of room there. So this is from Vice.com. Former President Trump's rally, Arizona, Saturday night. There were many conspiracy theories about election fraud, about psyops, but one of the conspiracies went to a whole news talking about Michael Protzman, negative 48. He said, in an audio chat on Sunday, he claimed that Kari Lake, the former TV anchor who's running for Arizona governor, had just finished speaking but was brought back up on stage to show people that Trump was in fact JFK in disguise. The basis for the claim? Trump was much shorter than he should have been. Okay, so if you remember, if you watched it, Kari Lake did go back up for a photo op and stood next to him. So what he's saying is that this was a way to signal to us, or to those in the know, that this wasn't Trump, that we're actually looking at JFK. 106-year-old JFK in a mask. Says while the number of people around Protzman has dwindled from a few hundred to a few dozen, he still has a huge online following. People online claim to have spotted JFK Jr. and his wife Carolyn Bessette Kennedy in the crowd. Separately, a rapper called Prime Minister claimed that the two people behind Trump were Tupac and Kobe Bryant. So Kobe Bryant was there as well. Fascinating. Because Kobe Bryant's death was very questionable and it had a great deal of foreshadowing. In fact, there's no reason to think Kobe Bryant's actually dead. I mean, there are some who believe he's been repurposed, that he's some younger NFL player. I think his name is Garrett. I don't believe that's true. But anyway, Tupac and Kobe Bryant. Okay, so 24 or so of Protzman's army. You know, I have some pictures actually of Protzman's army. They're walking around. Here's an image of it. Dallas. No, here they are. Look at this. They've got these shirts that have JFK, Trump, and JFK Jr., and they're carrying these big signs of JFK Jr.'s face with MAGA hats. Big red hats. And they're marching around chanting that this is the second coming, the manifestation of Jesus Christ. Nothing can stop what is coming. It's Jesus F. Kennedy. Jesus F. Kennedy. It's unbelievable, but it's true. Commenter says, if someone can prove to me that the earth beneath my feet makes 4 motions into space, I'll buy you a cake. Mark Beretta says, it's way past the point of knowing who, what, and where is real. Well, you know, this is the irony of it is, anything coming from the mainstream needs to be vetted if it's an extraordinary claim. So I'm just suggesting, and this is the irony of it, is that the claims of Q and QAnon and Michael Protzman are no crazier than the claims of the mainstream media. It's kettle calling pot black. You know, each calls the other a heretic, a conspiracy theorist. But they're both wrong. Now here's another example of someone wearing a disguise, or believed to be someone wearing a disguise. So this is who JFK Jr. showed up as. Women for Trump. And this was posted by Sabrina. She says, that's JFK Jr., folks. And if you're looking at the screen, you're looking at a chubby, bearded, older gentleman with a pink sign that says Women for Trump. So apparently JFK Jr. outs himself in the audience by waving around a pink sign that says Women for Trump at all the different rallies. But it's always a different disguise. Hike Neuter says, nobody famous is going to save us. We says JFK is Trump, okay. Right, well, I was on board, at least with the narrative and the structure, with JFK Jr. But when you're throwing in JFK himself, you're adding in an element of age. However, it might be part of the fulfillment of this prophecy. I mean, who knows what they can fake? Because here's what they actually believe. They actually believe that the second coming happened, and it was JFK, and that getting shot in the head was the deep state's way of trying to take him out instead of crucifying him and making it obvious. But that he survived, or he came back from the dead. Who knows? But whatever it is, when he reveals himself, the whole world's going to follow him. which incidentally is just exactly the story of what happens with the Antichrist, who has a vicious head wound and survives, and the world thinks it's a miracle, and they follow him for 1,000 years. So in a way, you could look at it as the QAnoners are waiting for the Antichrist. They're on board. They always say the best is yet to come, and I've been thinking maybe it's the beast is yet to come. AK All Day 2323 has a correction here. Tupac and Kobe were selling popcorn at the concession stand. Jessica White says, do you think the moon has any effect on human behavior? I actually do. I do. I've seen some correlations. And lunacy, the term lunacy has a basis, I think, in observations. What kind of effect? I think it's an interesting topic. I had a caller the other night calling in about astrology, and I kind of touched on that, about the effect of these different bodies on the sun itself, and apparently there's a crack in the Earth's magnetosphere right now. Just a heads up. Lily Bell says Junior was hot. I don't understand this way, the reason why people fetishize these celebrity politicians, but the fact is they did turn the Kennedys into pretty much this American royalty family, Camelot. And they have called JFK Jr. America's crown prince. And so, this idea of a prince returning, someone brought up that movie Coming to America. Interesting story here. Very interesting story. I'm going to have to look into it. Reminds me, there's a new version of Macbeth I may go check out. Any high-profile movie like that with actors that are always in predictive programming is worth checking out. It's the reason why I immerse myself in Netflix. I'm not a TV watcher. To me, it's just opposition research, reverse engineering, the mind control. All right, let's move on. Matt King says, what happened to bearded women being only at the circus? So many interesting headlines today. Again, Bob Saget predicted his own death. That's a big deal. China and Russia are teaming up against NASA in the race to put a base on the moon. So I've talked about this quite a lot, that the space wars are coming back, and it's going to be Russia and China taking down our space station. And this year I've shown to be correct in my reading of the Metascript, because China and Russia have both been responsible for fields of space junk nearly taking out the space station. And there's a crack in the space station. And apparently the Americans and the Russians don't get along. At least if you go by the story about how the Russians are blaming the American for the hole that was drilled in the thing, saying she was having a meltdown and wanted to go home. I mean, there's a few subtle indicators there that there's a schism up above. But Russia and China teaming up, yeah, it's because it's space communism versus space capitalism. The space cowboys, the billionaires like Bezos and Elon Musk, Richard Branson, and their ideas for commercializing space with business parks, space tourism, mining asteroids. That was the underlying theme of Don't Look Up. If you let the capitalists take charge of our ventures into space, we're all going to die. That's why you have Russia and China teaming up to take over the moon first. Space wars. And the next Space 9/11 is coming. The next 9/11 is coming from space, in my opinion. Actually, in my reading of the script, and I've been right about pretty much everything so far. And one of the main things about this Space 9/11 recently that I think was pointed out was this. America is being blamed for global warming. American capitalism is the problem here. This is the thing that the entire global system is going to have to unite against. And it's this small minority on their Titanics, like Jeff Bezos on his mega yacht. They're the ones who are turning the Earth into the Titanic, headed towards an iceberg. Well, the iceberg is global warming. It's climate crisis. That's kind of what they're suggesting here. It doesn't have to be a falling object that we're all ignoring like in the movie. But the point is, the Chinese and the Russians are teaming up because of the problem that America creates with its approach to outer space. And that's the real basis for the space war. So just the other day in the Bronx, last week, there was a fire. And just think about the initial points to the fire and how it was reporting. So you had the 19 stories. Twin Parks, 19 dead. 9 was the date. So again, 19. Think about that. 19 hijackers, 9/11. Pearl Harbor, Operation AI, or 19. 19 years after 9/11, after the 19 hijackers, you had COVID-19. Post COVID-19, we have this Gaia operation from the World Economic Forum, which is all about AI taking over government. AI 19. This is code for transforming the world with psychodramas, with powerful transformative psychodramas. So again, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, COVID, this post-reset, all this stuff has the same type of code around it. So here you have an event. Again, listen to the code here. So we're talking about in the Bronx. So you already have New York. Twin Parks. And it was the Twin Parks Northwest. So the twin, as in Twin Towers, it's a callback. 19 stories, 19 dead, 9. Now these numbers changed after. They might have counted the death toll down, but my point being, when it's initially reported, and this was the 2022 Bronx fire. Now, the thing was caused by what? So we have this mini 9/11, a lot of callbacks to 9/11, but what was the cause? And by the way, it was at 333 East 181 Street. And if you look at the thing itself, the fire truck, we actually had a reporter go down there and examine this, and we have pictures, and I think it's 100% a psyop. There's no reason to think anybody actually died. And that's how I can be so flippant about it. I don't trust the news because I know they lie. The narrative here, I can't breathe. Now, the reason I can't breathe was the main meme pushed in 2020. It wasn't just George Floyd, I can't breathe because Western chauvinism, police oppression, but now it's I can't breathe because climate change. I can't breathe because the pandemic. I can't breathe was a reoccurring theme. Happens to be an anagram for a better China. Think about that and the significance of the war of space commies versus space capitalism. A better China. A better China, to me, suggests this communist revolution. We can't breathe with this American system, with this private property supporting system of capitalism, and we can't breathe because it's destroying the atmosphere, global warming, etc. So they have this way of reintroducing the same themes. Even Astroworld, people were chanting I can't breathe, if you remember, because there were too many people. That's the subtext to that psyop. Too many people in the world. So in Astroworld, you had too many people, they were chanting I can't breathe, and the survivors, the victims, they're getting legal help from the same guy that represented George Floyd's family, Benjamin Crumb. I can't breathe. Give me a break. But this is a reoccurring theme, and it's telling us that the world can't breathe overpopulation. We've got to change the way we're doing things. We've got to go with the reset. So there's one more tie-in here. That the reporter, the IPR reporter pointed this out to me, that you had fire engine number 42, which is, he believed, he said, hey, 42 is probably a reference to Washington State. Moreover, Twin Parks Northwest. Maybe that's a reference to the Northwest, that we're going to have another Twin Tower, another 9/11 in the Northwest, possibly in Washington. So I'm like, that connects pretty well. And then what's more, the fires were started by space heaters. So to think of this theme of global warming, of space war heating up, of China and Russia teaming up against America. So space heaters. Well, the thing about space heaters is, not only are these said to be the cause of this recent fire, and they look like CubeSats with lasers, like the type that Elon Musk is putting up there. But anyway, I think it's all a suggestion of the coming space war. But what's even more is, of course, space heaters are now being said to be a symptom of poverty. That if you're too poor to actually be able to look, symbols of inequity. Deadly Bronx Fire, this is from NBC News, puts a focus on space heaters, which they see as, quote, symbols of inequity. So like capitalism, it oppresses the poor, how climate change disproportionately affects the poor. Well, here's another example. We have space heaters killing people who are poor. And again, it's the system that puts them in the position of having to use this. And they can also say, well, our weather's more extreme because of course, capitalism. And I believe even right now as we speak on the East Coast, I think they just got hit with a major snowstorm, and I think 200,000 people have their power out right now as we speak. So you can bet, yeah, winter storms hit the East Coast, causing power outages and flight cancellations, 200,000 without power. You can bet they're going to blame this on capitalism, climate change, on you not recycling or whatever. So it's like the angry volcano god. You're not making the necessary sacrifices. This is like the flood. Your wickedness, you brought about the flood. You're not listening to Noah. Not Noah from the Bible, but the National Atmospheric Oceanic Administration. Same symbols, same basic storyline. It's a modern flood myth. You're being punished by the weather god, by the storm god. So anyway, 200,000 without power, this is going to be blamed on something other than nature. And how many people are going to have to use space heaters because of this? But again, I think the whole space heater narrative is foreshadowing that space wars is coming. Russia and China, they're going to create a better China for all of us so that we can all breathe again. And it's going to involve Russia and China teaming up, initiating space wars, and it's probably going to start by, I don't know, maybe some kind of attack targeting the Northwest. I think you can extrapolate all of that from the information given, from the headlines and the stories. All very highly choreographed, a bunch of crisis actors. One of the actors at the scene said, it's like something you'd see in a movie. Okay, let me see, I'm going through some comments. Hike Neuter says it's too cold in space. Oh yeah, exactly. I was watching this Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms live stream the other night, on Saturday night, and he was in what looked to be a garage or something, playing music, a studio, but he had a parka on. It's like maybe he's in Antarctica, but it's because it was obviously so cold. And I'm like, do flat earthers not believe in space heaters? Anyway, I'll put a link here. I'm going to play a quick clip from this. It was really incredible. Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworm, we play a lot of his music, but a lot of what we play was from prior to, well, 2020, and then a lot of his 2020 stuff, which was extremely interesting and relevant, COVID-19, 84, Mask of the Beast. But what he played the other night was what he calls drone pop, throat singing psychedelia. Incredible, incredible sound, incredible music, awesome droney live performance. And I'll go ahead and play it now for about 30 seconds just to give you a heads up. And I'll put a link in the chat that if you're not subscribed to Chief Crow, you might miss some of these spontaneous live streams. Alright, that's some live Chief Crow. Incredible soundscape, 50 minutes, non-stop awesomeness. Alright, let me go through comments. Someone says there's a new moon coming. Jimmy Crump says, I have a feeling aliens aren't far away. I don't think they are either. I think they're beneath your feet. I think when the aliens come out, it'll be like that movie Tremors, where these big toothy whale-like things that burrowed beneath the ground would just scoop you up, or just they'd come out of the ground. Just they had tentacles too, I believe. But yeah, my point is, I think if there are aliens, they're subterranean. So no, they're actually within a couple of miles at all times. Shannon Jones says, in space, no one can hear you scream. They say that, but I saw a video on the moon where one of the astronauts, N-O-T, or actor-nauts, was hammering a nail or spike, and I remember thinking, wait, I'm hearing that, and it's in space, and I think it was a glitch. Maybe they just, special effects guy didn't account for that, but I'll find that clip. But anyway, I think they might have goofed there. All right, today's 1/17/2022. We're about a week away from some significant military drills in North Carolina. They're going to simulate going to war with conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers in 25 counties. So that should be interesting and entertaining. And you've been warned if you're in North Carolina that they're going to be using, I believe they're going to be using actual rounds or blanks, but it's going to sound like actual warfare. So simulated warfare. And look, this is why I bring this up. So they're doing simulated warfare in North Carolina from January 22nd to February. Well, late December, Space Force was doing simulations for warfare above, for our satellites being attacked. So I'm like, wait a minute here. They have movies about satellites falling, about stuff falling from the sky, Don't Look Up, and then we have a big asteroid that rumbles Pennsylvania on New Year's. Meanwhile, Space Force is doing drills for the same thing. So I'm looking at this as, well, they're probably going to do something because these drills are usually just rehearsals. And that's how I look at all of these things. If they're doing a drill, it's because they're putting everything into place so that they can pull off some psyop later. Okay, let's see here. Happy birthday, global warming. Climate change is 33. Yep, last June it turned 33. So look, this is the reason why I thought this might be significant again. So climate change, I think it replaced global warming, because global warming entered politics in June of '88. It says in June of '88, climate change celebrates its 33rd birthday. It was born. This June it was the 33rd birthday. So they had actually put out an article, global warming has begun. So this is 33 years. But before that, you had other things like it's going to freeze, we're being overpopulated. And global warming had to change itself. It became climate change because it was too obvious that nothing was happening in the direction they said it was going. But I think it's important to note that if climate change is 33, then we would expect the culmination of all their prophecies to come true this year, would we not? For example, I called this Space Junk Armageddon Space Wars as kicking off 42 years after Skylab fell, and I was correct, because of the number 42 and how encoded this is with their entire metascript. Well, this 33 order out of chaos is also a very consistent thing. So they bookend these things. They start something off, 33 years later, it comes into fruition. Remember, 9/11 happened in 2001, but when did it start? It actually started in '68. The construction of the towers to their destruction. That was a 33-year ritual. 911 became an emergency number in the United States in 1968 as well. But my point is, you had a 33-year creation to destruction cycle with the towers. And then 13 years later, they erect a new tower to replace them. Originally, it was going to be called the World Trade Center Phoenix. They opened it up on 113. 13 years later, think about that. 13 years after 9/11, at Ground Zero, they put up a new tower, opening it up on 113. And it looks like a big Vax needle. And the next iteration, the next major psyop, the next 9/11ing was 3/11 and 11/3, the election and the whole kraken and the schism that's created. But my point is, if global warming, if it started off 33 years ago, then it's pretty obvious to me that this is the year that it's going to happen. Commenter says, been here before, lost the wrench. IPS is fun to listen to. After the flat earth community burned down, I didn't care about much. Oh yes, if you're in the chat and you're participating and commenting, I will be going through and handing out wrenches shortly after. Matt King says, global warming, LOL, but it's getting colder here every winter and people eat it up. But you see what they've done. They've said, well, you're confusing weather with climate, and the fact that it's colder means that climate's getting more intense. So winters will get colder, summers will get hotter. It's all climate chaos now. So they can take credit, or rather they can scapegoat you for any bad weather. They don't take credit for it when it's like not getting warmer. Al Gore never came out and said, wow, none of my prophecies came true. I guess I saved y'all. Because that's what was happening. You had the Environmental Protectionist Agency, EPA, Al Gore, this climate mafia going out there extorting money out of everybody just to do business, and global warming doesn't happen. So how come we're not saying, hey, that was money well spent, you saved us. Thank you, Al Gore. No, he never came out and took credit for it because the scam is never meant to end. Now you might find this kind of interesting. because Al Gore, savior, mankind. You might find this interesting that there is this conspiracy theory that Christopher Reeves is a death faker and that he was repurposed and brought back as Al Gore. Have you seen this one? And I'm like, well, what would be the point of it? Kind of messed up his looks a little bit and destroyed his character and made him into somebody totally unlikable. But I think what they did here, if this is the case, here's the rationale. Just like the reason why David Hogg is Adam Lanza, and that makes sense, is Stockholm Syndrome. The face of school shooters, the face of terror, is now the face of the savior, the guy who's going about banning guns. So if your savior is also your terrorist, you have Stockholm Syndrome. That's why the gunophobes love the police and the SWAT teams that come in to save them from the redneck with the gun, because they're afraid of individuals with guns, but not the state with guns. It's Stockholm Syndrome. They're in love with their captors. Well, here you have Christopher Reeve as Al Gore. How would this work? Well, I think the rationale would be this. You were introduced to Christopher Reeve. You knew him as Superman, saving the world, saving the world, saving the world. You're always seeing this image. It's buried in your subconscious. Well, now he comes back. But you know how Superman's a deep faker already, Clark Kent. So it's like, well, people look at it. How do you not recognize Clark Kent and Superman? Are these people dumb? How are they not saying it's just glasses and a little bit of a different hairstyle, different mannerisms? Well, this is another example of deep fakery in plain sight. But my point is, Al Gore is just another Clark Kent who's saving the world. And I think that the archetypal transference here, the transference of emotions, and I mean, you're going to be responding to the person as though it's the same person, I would imagine. That would be the rationale if it's true. I don't know for sure. Going through comments here. See if anyone else agrees or disagrees. Lee says wrenches are overrated. They're actually not. We're in the age of NFTs. The Infinite Plane Society wrenches are infinitely valuable. They're not backed by any specific currency yet. But I'm telling you, if you get one of these blue wrenches in the IPS server, it will be worth a lot in the future. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Is Christopher Reeves Al Gore? This is just a note from the other day. I think that the powers that be are preparing a meme-demic. A meme-demic. You heard it here first. Not a pandemic. This is going to be this rationale, this ultimate rationale. They're going to say something so bad is going to happen that they're going to say we need to lock down certain sites. We need to have a quarantine, like Facebook's banning system, but for everybody. And you don't get back on the internet until you're vaxxed. Digitally vaxxed. You're digitally masked until you've been vetted. So just a heads up, I think that there's going to be a meme-demic, just like they did a trial run, and they succeeded. Think about this. There is a precedent for this. Christchurch. The Christchurch shooting was used as a precedent to do a whole lot of censorship. They said, hey, this guy was live streaming his video, and now we have to ban live streaming for anybody with less than 1,000 subs on YouTube from your phone. The New Zealand mosque shooting. So what happened is, and that's Brenton Tarrant's shooting, the white supremacist who killed 51 at 2 mosques. Now my point is, after this happened, the video went viral, and they were arresting or threatening to arrest people who shared the video. So like, no, we can't let this hate get out there. It says Facebook says it removed 1.5 million videos of the New Zealand shooting. The mass shooting in New Zealand was designed to spread. So they're talking about something called the gamification of mass murder, that it was meant to spread, that these massacre videos were going to be spread through 4chan and other websites. So they actually created a little bit of a meme-demic here. And they used this to shut down many sites. They shut down BitChute in New Zealand. I mean, they were using this to ramp up the censorship, and nobody disagreed. They thought this is necessary. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, radical hate on obscure websites from people who get kicked off YouTube where it's acceptable. It gestates, it festers, and it turns out these shooters. And all these people cheer it on, the gamification of mass murder, and it's like a sport to them. This was the whole storyline here. So my point being, they have already prepared for the coming meme epidemic, where they're going to have to, and I'm not sure what it's going to be. I have a strong feeling. I have a not a strong feeling actually. I have narrative support within the Metascript that we're about to see something that's going to precipitate some kind of a calamity online where they're struggling to stop the spread of a certain clip. We'll see. I don't want to be too specific. Not, it's like, what's the definition? What is the timeline between a conspiracy theory and it becoming reality? It used to be like, what, 6 months? Now it's like 3 months. Like, it's a spoiler though. Ultimately, a good conspiracy theory is a spoiler, and I don't want to spoil this one. Those of you who read the Metascript probably know what's coming. On the screen, you see some more artwork by Wonka World. If you're in our Discord server, you'll see a lot of people are dropping penguin artwork. In fact, if you want to support this channel, I have started a side job so I can do more of this. I'm selling a lot of my charcoal art. If you go to timosmond.win, and I started a new series because I'm trying to create memes out of my art. So this one here is called Deepfaked #1, and I'm going to do a lot of these. And this is done charcoal pencil on art paper. I use spray fixative. You will receive it in a protective plastic sleeve and everything. And this one's called Adam Hogg. And I was talking about this earlier, how you have the savior and terrorist all rolled into one. Just a bowl cut away. But here you have it. Adam Hogg, and on the left you see Hogg, on the right you see Adam. Same basic face. But I thought, if I do this type of artwork with charcoal and I cartoonize it a bit, it's going to be so much more difficult to censor. I'll probably even create an NFT out of this. But my point is, I'm starting a series. If there are any crisis actors or psyops that you want me to illustrate or draw, put it in the chat and I will definitely take suggestions. There's less commitment with this type of art than painting, so it doesn't take up all of my time. Okay, I'm going through some comments. Hike Neuter says, I was a flat earther before the rise of IPS. What was your first clue? What made you think? I think there's a stronger case to be made for shape agnosticism, globe skepticism, even rejecting entirely the claims of NASA when it comes to their descriptions of what outer space is. For sure. But do I know for sure what it is, how it is? No. Check this out. Someone has said to me that they think that chemtrails, so-called, are actually being used as a screen for holograms for the coming fake alien invasion, assuming they're coming from above, which could easily just be an enemy attack. But listen to this follow-up tweet. I think this guy nailed it. This is from Call for Zero. He said, and this is in reference to the screen of the sky, or the sky being turned into a screen with these so-called chemtrails. He says, you're partially right. Sky image projection is child's play, but if you add a few choreographed charges on the ground, you'll have an attack. And it won't be from aliens, it'll be from our next enemy. So I've been thinking Russia, China, space wars, rods of God, kinetic weapons, falling satellites, all that kind of thing could easily be choreographed with a combination of, yes, sky image projection and attacks on the ground, not to mention crisis actors everywhere. That's the main thing. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Jessica White says that's a great idea. Well, you know what? I've been attempting to supplement the site here, the ability to finance it, with subscriptions. It's mostly there, but not quite. So I'm trying to supplement it with art sales. But selling art is really tricky today. It's always been tricky. It's probably never been easy. And I'm not on eBay anymore, which makes it very difficult because that's one of the few places where you have constant traffic. So my new angle is I'm going to create memes, censorable memes with art, and I'm going to basically highlight a lot of deep fakers. I have some ideas, for example, maybe doing suspected deep fakers with their mask half off, showing, that kind of thing. So if you have any ideas, like I said, put it in the Discord server, and those of you who are posting art in the Discord server, appreciate that. In fact, I'll go through I'll go through some of it. I'll probably dedicate an entire live stream to going through our server's art. We have the whole animation department, and we also have another area where people post their art. If you're not a member, go to infiniteplane.radio. $2 per month, full access to the Discord think tank. You'll find out everything first, quite literally. Okay, let's move on a little bit here. Michael Jackson is not dead. I mean, he hasn't shown up at any Trump rallies, but someone sent this to me, and I'm pretty sure that this is legit. A couple of Mike's alter identities, but one of the things about him is, let me see if I pull this one up. We have voice here. I have a voice comparison of one of Michael Jackson's characters and then of Michael Jackson himself, saying the exact same thing verbiage wise. Twitter is blocked for me right now, so I'll connect here in just a minute. I hope there's not a Twitter outage. I was thinking Space Wars isn't going to really heat up until China shoots down the DirecTV satellite. That's going to be the thing that gets Americans involved. Okay, it looks like that person's Twitter account was banned. That's how you know they're onto something. And this is why I take screen caps of everything. I'll get back to you on that soundbite, but Dave is one of them. We also know he's played a few other roles, but I have a few different characters clearly being portrayed by Michael Jackson, and you can actually see him in the various stages of costuming here, where first it's the bald cap, and I wanted to hone in on this bald cap and the fake hair. So I talked about how the deepfakes use the hair to hide the seams. Now look at Michael Jackson with the bald cap. You know how his hair normally looks. So think about Owen Schroyer and the QAnon shaman. This is the type of bald cap we're talking about. It's not one of these thick, head condoms like you see in these Halloween stores where it's an obvious bald cap and it adds thickness to the head. No, this is like very, very subtle. I think it's very curious too that Michael Jackson was so obsessed with these costumes, always disguising himself. And people talked about his plastic surgery and how extreme it was. And I'm thinking maybe he had his face hacked down so he could more easily fit into these disguises. Mayor King says, I kind of want a bowl cut just to trigger people. Right. Well, the thing is, you'd be one of the boulders. It's like brothers, but they call them boulders. It's a dumb word. The ADL probably made it up. They claim that the bowl cut is a hate symbol. Here's the actual ADL website. The bowl cut, or the Dylan Roof, says that the Bowl Gang, they call themselves Bowl Trash, the Bowl Waffen Division, and they're aiming for the final Bowlution. This is so dumb. I can't believe this. I don't believe this. I really don't. And then they have these memes that they say are glorifying Dylan Roof. And I mean, these memes are just so substandard, even for white nationalists. I don't think these are real. Look at this one. Take the bowl pill. It's got a bowl cut in one hand and a blue pill in the other, and it's the bowl. Anyway, it's absurd. But my point being here, of course, is they can designate this a hate symbol and it becomes one. And now all shooters are characterized as having this cut. And to me, it's a symbol. It symbolizes poverty, poor, resentment. They feel displaced by immigrants who are taking their jobs. They resent their guns being taken, so they have this gun fetish. I mean, it's all just a character that they built up, a straw man. Check this out. This is from Zero Hedge, courtesy of Tyler Durden. Tyler Durden, again, this is one of this. I don't know his real name, but this is one of the great authors of Zero Hedge. He's on top of this. China reveals AI news anchor. It's indistinguishable from a real human. I've been talking about this because, yes, this Tom Cruise deepfake is revealed or exposed, what we have exposed here already. People don't know the difference between real and fake. They can't. That we don't have enough input to know. I mean, the fact is, even if you're a skilled video editor, you can't distinguish when it's really that good. So then the question becomes, do you still accept television as primary source? And this is where the question of auto hoax versus auto believe comes into play here. Do you automatically believe what you see with extraordinary claims coming to the screen? Or do you assume it's fake until substantiated with evidence? In other words, are you going to be consistently duped or not? It's really up to you. And it takes no effort to not believe. It actually takes a greater effort to take that leap of faith. Like I'm a non-believer when it comes to a lot of this mass media programming. I'm very agnostic about it. I think it's all very debatable. And I think many of these conspiracy theorists with extraordinary claims are far less extraordinary than the real stories. Check this one out. Obvious deep faker, since we're on the topic. Blasey Ford, that's a rubber hood. Look at the neck. Look at the hair. That's a rubber hood. If you look at the eyes, you look at the teeth, and even the facial expressions, Brett Kavanaugh, as a satanic humiliation ritual to secure his seat on the Supreme Court, played the role of his own accuser. He accused himself of sexual assault. And he had to defend himself against these claims. It was humiliating. It was dramatic. And all his facial expressions were very, very intense. What a thespian. But she was so, I guess, still traumatized by this incident from decades ago that she refused to be in the same room. Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford never appeared in the same room at the same time. I wonder why. If you want to get into the Discord server, go to infiniteplanesociety.com, infiniteplane.info, infiniteplane.radio. All roads lead to the same place. They get you access to Discord, the newsletter, and all the latest information. Someone had sent this link to me about China. Maybe it was Echo Charlie. Who sent this to me? Anyway, this is from ResearchGate.net. An experimental study of pig blood lime mortar used on ancient architecture in China. So this is the topic of astrocrete. I've been referring to how the scientists are going to be mixing your blood when you go to the moon with the soil to create bricks, blood bricks, astrocrete. Astrocrete is a concrete-like material proposed to be used on the moon or Mars, made from regolith and human serum albumin, a protein from human blood. It can be used as a binder with extraterrestrial dust to create cosmic concrete. Futuristic astronauts will be using their blood to create bricks. So, in the future, that's how they're going to do it. Very Soylent Green, if you ask me. But someone pointed out that this does have a precedent with pig's blood in China. Well, now check this out. This is another correlation, blood and soil. And this kind of crossed my mind as well when I was saying that this might even be part of building up this ideology of the self. The individual is expendable. You're now part of the collective. You sacrifice part of yourself. Hey, we all need a home, so we all got to give a pint of blood. Very Soylent Green. Very much like you have to recycle, give of yourself. This is all self-sacrifice. You know, the blood pact with the state, the pokey, that's what that represents. A little violation of your boundary, a little pinprick, a drop of blood to get in the cult, to show that you're willing to give a little for the collective. You're effacing yourself when you put on the mask. You get rid of your face, so now you're safer to be around everybody else. It's always about self-sacrifice. That's the key here, self-sacrifice. And in the age of Facebook and social media, sacrificing the face is a big deal. I think this is all a psyop. So now they're tying in blood and soil. This was a nationalist slogan expressing Nazi Germany's idea of a racially defined national body united to the area. So it's about your bond to the land that you're at. It's the land of your forefathers, your blood, and your soil. So this, though, again, is about racial collectivism. It's about your identity is tied down to the place of your birth, and outsiders don't belong. I mean, outsiders are different fundamentally because they don't have your ancestry. They're not connected to it. Well, I think this is part of the collectivist ethos that they're engineering into the American mind, so when they go into space, they will be fine in the space gulags. You know, it's space communism. They're engineering you to live as a collectivist. That's why they want to make an example out of the space cowboys like Bezos, Branson, and Musk. These are individuals, the richest individuals in the world, facilitated by our system that is built on allowing individuals to, quote, exploit others. I mean, that's their Marxist narrative, but they've applied it to outer space. That's the reason for the coming space wars, and that's why Russia and China are teaming up against NASA in the race to put a moon on the base on the moon. Yeah, a communist moon base is in the works. All right, let's go ahead and continue. A few other things I wanted to go into. Novak, the tennis player, continues to make headlines. Again, the world stage actors, they always have names that reflect their purpose. A new QAnon conspiracy about clones and a governor. Yes, the true believers in MAGA believe that DeSantis has been replaced. So I was suggesting that it was the same actor that was playing Trump, wearing like a rubber hood. And I'm thinking here, someone might be onto this, but he thinks it's a clone. And I think clones, the theory of clones, conspiracy theories like Dave Chappelle is a clone, I think it's absurd. I think you're more likely to dealing with body doubles or rubber masks, rubber people. Clones, I don't really think that there's any kind of basis for what they're describing. But a rubber mask would explain it away. Take a listen.
And California, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Wisconsin.
Yeah, they all
those states.
Yeah.
But we just need one, and he won the election.
Yeah, well.
And Newsom's a clone, okay? They just took him out.
He's a puppet for the left.
Oh, Newsom's a clone. I thought this was Governor DeSantis. He said Governor Newsom's a clone. Okay, so he was taken out by the deep state. That's one of their themes. They're saying, oh, they've been replaced. Well, again, I don't think clones exist. Now, I do think there is something about Governor Newsom, though. So take a look at the face of Governor Newsom. I know if you haven't eaten breakfast yet, you may not want to. It's kind of earlier here. Okay, there you have Governor Newsom. Now look at Ron Goldman. Ron Goldman was supposedly killed by the recently freed OJ, Free the Juice. So here's not Governor Newsom when he's young. This is actually Ron Goldman. Again, this guy was supposedly killed by OJ Simpson. Now again, just do a quick side-by-side for yourself. Tell me that Ron Goldman isn't Governor Newsom in a previous role, a previous made-for-TV role. I mean, isn't that what politics is? It's just show business for people who couldn't make it. You know, I call them the GAGs, the Government Actors Guild. Some people are less charitable. They say show business, here we go, politics is show business for ugly people, which I don't agree with. But my point is, look, Governor Newsom is clearly Ron Goldman. Prove me wrong. Truman B3000 says a lot of deep fakes on Netflix reality shows. Yeah, no doubt. You know, Netflix, Propaganda Central, that is pretty much church. That is the altar of the NWO de facto state church. And the co-founder and one of the first CEOs of Netflix is the great nephew of Edward Bernays, the progenitor of public relations, the science and art of manipulating the mass mind with media. Joined by Pete Shea. He says, it's been a while. Good to hear Tim Win live. Yeah, join us pretty much every day at this time, and also in the evenings we'll be taking calls. Anything I don't get to now, we will get to later. Anything I bring up now that piques your interest, definitely mention later. Again, I think it is likely. I think it is likely that MLK is a death faker. I guess today's the day to talk about that one. MLK is definitely Don King, or rather Don King is Martin Luther King. Again, the name means everything. Don is another way of referencing a king, like a mafia don, a leader, the head. But now here you have a classic example of how you would do a deepfake. You reverse everything. You change everything about their character. If they're bald, you give them long hair. If they're reserved, you make them boisterous. So here we have.
So today is Martin Luther King Day. so I figured I might as well expose him.
Now, this is a video from Conscious X from 1 year ago. I'm going to play a few minutes of it, and I'll make sure to put a link here to this in the newsletter and on my Minds account.
Because Martin Luther King did fake his death, and he is now playing the role of Don King. And before we get into that, I just want to show you guys why he was a sellout. So right here, he has a picture with Jacob Rothschild. And if you guys didn't know, the Rothschilds created the banking system.
Okay, so here you have Martin Luther King. Let me fast forward here so you can see some comparisons.
And there's not that many pictures of Martin Luther King in color, so I tried getting all of them. That way it could be a good comparison. These two look very similar right here. Don King has like this crazy hairstyle. That way it can throw you off.
Yep, that's the classic CIA technique. They throw you off by reversing expectations.
They always have to do something to try to throw you off. Look at this, you guys. Like, what is this right here? They always do this crazy type of thing to just throw you guys off. Nobody would expect Martin Luther.
Anyway, this is Conscious X. Very, very compelling. And what's kind of interesting is they said it was a Karen. So you have a lady in a crowd who sees Don King. And I believe this was last year. She sees him out in public. I believe that was at a Walmart. Yeah, this is it. So she sees Don King at a Walmart, and she goes up to him and she says, "I still remember your 'I Have a Dream' speech," which was what, 57 years ago? So you have this older lady who literally thinks she's talking to Martin Luther King. So again, her first reaction, her first response when she hears his voice, she doesn't think this is Don King. We'll play this for you.
Yes. Hi, how you doing? Don King?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm a YouTube celebrity. I got my own t-shirt company.
I love this man. I did his speech when I was in high school. I had a dream. His speech when I was in high school. I had a dream.
I heard your speech when I was in high school. I had a dream. So, anyway, did she just call out a deep fake? What do you make of that? This video went pretty viral. They said it was some Karen. But no, I think maybe she legitimately thought they had a physical resemblance, which is objectively true, according to Conscious X and many of these photos. Interesting. Let me play that little clip one more time.
Speech when I was in high school. I had a dream.
All right. Interesting. Then we have Tupac in disguise at the Trump rally. We have Bob Saget predicting his own death, who said, quote, this is a direct quote, "I don't have long to live. I'm going to be found dead in bed." He said that last October. If you missed that clip, you can find it just at the beginning of this live stream. I play it, but I have a link. And so it's kind of subtle, and I had trouble finding it earlier in the live stream, but I have it marked at the right timestamp. Again, Bob Saget literally predicts his own death. Okay, we'll go through a few other links here. Like again, we're going to probably be back tonight to take calls, and we'll fill in any of the blanks here. Let me take another look through the chat, see if I've missed anything. Clockwork says Conscious X has some interesting work. Charles says Newsom was gone, nowhere to be found for like 2 weeks with no explanation. He missed the big climate summit. Wow. Maybe OJ found him. OJ was free. A lot of stabby stuff going around. I want to check out the new Scream movie, by the way, and see if there's anything there, predictive programming wise, because remember Halloween came out with the knife guy, Michael Myers. Same archetype, same Saturnian archetype. Guy in black with a scythe or a knife and a skull-like visage. But the interesting thing is the knife man in the Halloween Kills, Michael Myers, uses the face of William Shatner, who was the Rocket Man this year. And another interesting thing, 42 years prior, he sang the song Rocket Man at the Saturn Club. 42 years prior, Halloween came out. The connection there? Halloween, Rocket Man, Knife Man. Well, in Wicca, the high priest is the knife man. The knife is the god symbol. The chalice is the goddess symbol. The rocket is an analogous symbol if you look at the iconography. So the Rocket Man, the Knife Man, same phallic symbol. So the idea that William Shatner went to space, and he jokingly said to Anderson Cooper, he jokingly said he was going to, quote, inseminate outer space. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. Well, the idea here is we're looking at a fertility rite. And in the witchcraft, the fertility rite is symbolized with what you would call the athame, or the dagger, going into the cup. I'm actually going to play a clip here. This is Anderson Cooper's one-on-one with William Shatner. And having explained what I just explained, their little inside joke here will make a little bit more sense. You also have to keep in mind that this was an entire year of people making fun of the shape of Jeff Bezos' rocket. So here we have.
But it lasts long enough at 17. That's your whole life.
Okay, here we have William Shatner and Anderson Cooper talking about their trip to space. And I'll get this clip because you'll hear things that you might just sort of ignore, like that Bob Saget comment, kind of subliminal. But then later, you slow it down and you're like, well, that kind of had some foreshadowing in it. Okay, here we have it. This is the best moments from Anderson Cooper's Full Circle 2020. See if I can get this clip. Going through some comments, Jesco says William Cooper was taken out too. A William Cooper from Behold a Pale Horse was rumored to have been taken out. I wouldn't be surprised if Alex Jones took him out at Bohemian Grove or something. I think they had some kind of intra-channel beef at the time. Now, William Cooper, though, what separates him from pretty much every single other conspiracy theorist or researcher out there is that not only did he call the moon landing a hoax, but he said that that space travel itself was fake and a hoax. And moreover, he said that this was all done in the context of here we go. William Shatner, Anderson Cooper, I just found this post here. Joke about inseminating the space program. The New York Post actually covered this. It kind of took me back there for a moment. They literally caught on to this. So, does this make any sense? Yeah, William Cooper was definitely against the whole. He exposed the space program had Masonic symbolism. I think he was the one who actually pointed out the code or the cipher that comes out when you look at the names of the different space shuttles. The Columbian Endeavor to discover Atlantis, Challenger will be destroyed. Now take a look at this though. Johnny Chain says, in space no one can hear you moan. Oh, you got to hear the William Shatner in space moaning videos. William Shatner, Anderson Cooper joke about inseminating space program. So does this make any sense? Now it says here, in a laughter-filled interview, they discussed the long cylindrical shape of the vehicle, and Shatner said, there's nothing to make fun of with the shape. We're inseminating the space program. Now again, this is one of these things that wouldn't make any sense if you didn't know that you're actually talking about the phallic symbol that represents the earth god, who is going to inseminate the sky goddess. And this is part of their nightly conjugal visit where they give birth to the sun god. This is Mystery Babylon. This is a ritual. So my point being, William Shatner is the rocket man to go inseminate space. Now again, space is heaven, it's Isis, it's the goddess. That's what his role is. So then you can add on to that he's also the knife man as the face of Halloween Kills Michael Myers. Now Michael Myers, Halloween Kills, knife man, same symbolic role. The knife and the chalice represents the conjugal visit of the sun and the moon, the god and the goddess, earth god, sky goddess. Same thing, same story. So again, we're just looking at people who are probably, I would say, in the know.
What?
I never.
Anyway, these two, I don't know if I want to listen to the audio. I'm going to find it later perhaps, but not a big deal. Just the fact that the New York Times honed in on that should tell you something. We're looking at the creation of a structured narrative, storytelling. What a bizarre thing to say. Just saying. Like, if you didn't have this proper context, would it make any sense to you? And then again, if you listen, let's go and play this since we're on the topic. William Shatner in space. Having all of that, having heard all of that, now when you hear this, it'll make a bit more sense to you. Like, I mean, he's a great actor. He's actually he is one of the finest actors. In fact, now there used to be this debate we had a poll. Who's the better actor? Who's the better astronaut? Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin or William Shatner? And we decided that the guys who went to the moon were better actors because they have to stay in character for decades and decades. Whereas Shatner would be the better astronaut since he has spent more time in simulated space environments. He's actually been around a bit more. But now I think you could make the case that Shatner is both the better actor and the better astronaut. Let me see if I can find the clip where he's up there in space. Watch William Shatner and crew in Zero G. Yep, this is the one. Now I say space in quotes. Even if you're a true believer in space and everything, did they even go past the Kármán line? How high did they actually get? Same with Richard Branson. Did they even reach Zero G, or are we merely looking at a very, very expensive parabolic flight? Here we go.
Oh, Jesus. No description can equal this. Wait.
This is nuts!
Oh,
This is
I'm telling you.
Alright, this is Shatner in space. Rocket Man.
Holy hell.
Knife Man. Inseminating space. Whatever that means. From atop Dr. Evil's Dong rocket. And yeah, Dr. Evil's rocket looks exactly like Bezos' rocket. Another non-coincidence. So many non-coincidences. Okay, so we covered a lot of deepfake stuff, predictive programming, people calling out their deaths in advance, like Bob Saget. Twice, I would say. Twice. Bob Saget effectively called out his death. So yeah, the burden of proof has to be shifted if you don't want to be an auto-believing dupe and fool who doesn't know the difference between real and fake. As admitted by the media today, people don't know because you can't tell. It's not your fault. It's not about being smart or aware. It's about the fact that the technology is so good that it fools the senses, that we are in the metaverse already. You don't even need the Oculus thing on your head. You don't need to tape your phone to your head to be in the metaverse. You're already kind of in it because we live through other people who are all immersed in it. We live in a global, so-called global doomsday cult. And people believe in things that are essentially superstitions, but they're dressed up in science, and they outnumber the non-believers. Anyway, this is Auto Hoax or GTFO by Chief Crow. I'll catch up with you all tonight. We'll take calls.